and his podcast will be located at duncantrussell.com in the comments section of this podcast. Now, everyone, please embrace and love this wonderful human being and thank the great eternal Godhead for geysering out the spray of particulates that eventually coalesced into a planet, that eventually coalesced into amoeba-like primordial ooze, which eventually coalesced into symbiotic relationships with other oozing, primitive, sludge-like beings, which eventually transformed into ancient, sharp-toothed beaver creatures living at the edge of time, which eventually transformed into the dinosaurs, which eventually transformed into oil, which eventually transformed into plastic, and eventually transformed into the recording device given to me by the wonderful Dr. Chris Ryan, and eventually transformed also into a Daniela Bolelli, who eventually came on this podcast again. So whatever I just said, do that, and Hare Krishna, everyone. Here is Daniela Bolelli. God bless you. Welcome back to the podcast. How are you?
Good. Yesterday, to give people out there an idea of the genesis of today's episode, I was peacefully sleeping in my bed, and I heard this cavernous, deep voice yelling at me. Daniele! I'm like, what the fuck? Who's there? What? I'm half asleep. I'm all out of it. And I'm like, Daniele, you need to record a podcast with Duncan. I'm like, who the fuck are you again? Who's talking to me? And he's like, I'm the universe, man. Capital U and everything. You motherfucker. Just get with the program. I'm going to implode unless you have another podcast with Duncan, because it's been way, way too long. So get on with it.
Way too long. Thank you, universe, for making that happen. It is funny that you emailed me saying the universe had compelled you to want to do a podcast with me, because I was thinking to myself how I didn't have a podcast to put out this week, and because I was in New Orleans and I was feeling quite like a piece of shit for not doing that. So this is awesome the way that worked out. I'm glad that you are in contact with the universe.
Yeah, the universe was very, very worried about your self-esteem, and so they figure, Duncan may feel bad about himself not recording for a week, so come on, go to Duncan already.
Self-esteem. Oh my God, man. Wouldn't you love to just get rid of that whole thing altogether? Self-esteem.
Yeah,
Isn't it embarrassing, self-esteem, or isn't it embarrassing when you feel slighted?
Yeah, because it's not, when you have it, big deal, right? You don't even think about it. When you don't have it, you realize what you're lacking every fucking second of the day, right? Because you feel like everything, you don't feel up to par with anything. Yeah. You keep feeling like, I fall short of how I should be, and blah, 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 blah. It sucks. It's like being sick, when you're healthy, you don't think about it, but every second you're sick, you're thinking about, damn, how good it is to be healthy.
Yeah. When you're insecure, you're like a human black hole. You're just trying to suck from people affirmation that you're an okay thing.
Yep.
How when you have, I don't know, this probably never happens to you, but sometimes when you have sex and
that never happens to me.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I don't mean the sex part, right. But I mean, you have sex and you have the compulsion to ask, was that all right?
I strongly
wasn't. If you gotta ask.
Right. I strongly resist that compulsion. But
I do too. But the feeling when you start finding yourself in that place where you're suddenly everything that you do is this kind of subtle manipulation to get the person you're with to be like, I think you're great.
That was awesome. You are so amazing. You rock my world.
Oh, God. I hate being on that side of things, man. It's such a squirmy feeling. But What is that feeling? What do you think that is?
No, I mean, I think is to one degree, even the most secure person in the world, there's some level of insecurity in everybody, because there's always that fear of failure, the fear of performance anxiety. Jesus, that's one of the most powerful things out there, whether it's public speaking, whether it's sex, whether it is, who knows, the idea of I'm going to step out, they're all going to look at me, and they're all going to point and laugh because they say, ha ha, you suck. It's like being in kindergarten or something, right?
Yeah.
It's that experience that when you have it as a tiny kid, pisses you off forever and stays with you.
Yeah, yeah, and you're always, depending on how you were raised, that's the idea, is that you're always trying to make up for it in some way. You're trying to fill that gaping hole that is left in you by, if you have like an over demanding parents or parents who are never satisfied with you.
And even if not, of course you're going to have less issues than the guy who had that problem, but even if you don't, everybody likes to be liked. Everybody enjoys you are so good, blah, 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 blah. We can pretend that we don't. We can act like, this flattery, I don't really care, but you're totally getting off on it sometimes. And it's not getting off in a weird, selfish, ego way, but it's like, it makes you feel good. It makes you feel validated that whatever you're putting your energy for, other humans you may like, acknowledge it and say, wow, that was awesome. It's silly, it may be silly ego, but still, that's life. And it's...
Yeah, and when you get around somebody who really, really loves you, you just want to be around them all the time.
Of course.
Because that feeling of being around them is like the same feeling you get when you find a heater when it's really cold outside. It gives you this sense of like, okay, I've found homeostasis here. This is what it's all about. Just this feeling. That feeling is the greatest feeling.
Absolutely. It's as good as it gets. That's part of the being in love experience. It's not just them adoring you or worshiping you. That's sort of the ego part. But then the whole thing is based on this exchange of energy where you can't get enough of the other person. They can't get enough of you. And you're like, fuck, this feels so good. I can't believe this.
Yeah. And that goes against everything that we've been taught in capitalism, or in I'm sorry, not capitalism. That's materialism. Materialists are people who think that you get that same feeling from buying stuff.
Yeah,
like a car, jewels, a nice house.
Of course.
You name it. There's all kinds of people who go running to the world trying to get that feeling. That it's so frustrating because you can only get that feeling from another person.
Right.
And you can't make a person feel like that.
That's why there's that vicious cycle that works like clockwork in our society, where people are lonely and miserable because they work too hard, they don't have time and energy to put into building huge, good relationships. Because then you're lonely and miserable, but at least you have some money. What do? You go yourself and you buy yourself something cool to feel a little better about your shitty life. So then for a while you have your new toy and you're like, oh, this is so cool, this is fun, I get to play with my thing. By now you spent money, which means that you need to work even harder at the job you hate, which then makes you even more lonely and miserable, which makes you more likely to want to buy something to feel a little better about your shitty life.
Yeah.
And it keeps going and going and going forever, right? It's perfect misery spiral that's not fun.
It's amazing because there's somebody at the end of that game, that misery spiral, who's probably well aware that you can make humans do that. Like in the same way, if I take my dog's toy, I can make him run in circles after the toy until he gets dizzy, and it's fucking hilarious.
I think somebody's doing that to a lot of people right now.
Yeah, it's almost like humans are turbines, and you can make them spin in this materialistic frenzy, and if you get enough humans spinning in the materialistic frenzy, then it will fucking power your empire. It will power this whatever you want. The energy, you that's how you generate energy from humans.
Right.
Is you get them to run after matter. You get them to chase after material things because they think the material things will give them the feeling of love.
Absolutely. That's like the Matrix, except you have them running so they sweat more. The Matrix with more sweat. That's what they're describing.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is.
But yeah, the reality is that most human beings, and all of us at one point or another, and most